Judy and I are going to tag team this one a little bit. It'll help keep you awake for the last little part of this. So we're really, really happy to be here today and to talk about privacy and confidentiality issues in historical health sciences collections. And I think that this shows yet another aspect in what we're talking about all day today and tomorrow about sort of the places where technology, evolving senses of privacy, information all come together, and we have to make new decisions in certain areas. And for us, one of the things that is sort of the higher level thing that we're grappling with all of this information is how those issues dovetail with our interest in preserving the cultural and historical record. One of the papers that Judy and I have written about this in the past was called Balancing Between Two Goods. And the two goods were, on the one hand, the preservation of privacy and confidentiality for subjects, and the other is the ongoing interest in our knowing what happened in the past and learning from it. So I think that our introduction went over our backgrounds pretty well already, but I want to tell you a story about how we got interested in doing this kind of work and research. When I first came to work at Ohio State was about 4 years ago, and our organization said, oh boy, we have a lawyer now. You can look at all kinds of things here and see if we're doing them right. And so I spent some time interviewing a lot of different people in the organization, a lot of department heads and so on, and saying, you know, what are your both legal and policy issues that are coming up for you? And one of the people I interviewed was Judy, and she said, well, you know, we have this issue. All medical historical special collections have this issue with HIPAA and privacy, and we really are still sort of sorting out as a profession how to deal with that, and we need to figure out how to work with that here. So we began to read, and we also began to talk to other people in this area, and we began to talk to the university privacy officer, and really seeing that there was a lot to learn on both sides. Of course, we had a lot to learn about this issue, but you know, we came in and we talked to the privacy officer for the medical center, and she said, wow, I didn't know you all had any historical health sciences collections. What are those anyway? And so I sometimes, at this point, the song from Oklahoma about how the farmhand and the cowboy can be friends comes to mind. There is a need on both sides of this issue for the archivists, the librarians, the custodians of the collections, and the privacy officers, the attorneys, and all of those people to talk together and come to a way to make access to these collections work within the law and ethical framework. So today we'll talk a little bit about those historical health sciences collections, because we realized at that point that these collections were very familiar to us, but not to everyone in the whole world. Then we'll talk a little bit about the privacy and confidentiality laws that affect those collections. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we think the strategies and solutions for dealing with these issues are. And I believe you're up next, Judy.
I am.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to spend just a little bit of time introducing you to what would be in these types of collections and what is in our collection. The Association of Research Libraries defines the term special collections in many different ways, and it's been used in many different ways in North America throughout time. But most commonly, it refers to rare books, manuscripts, and archival collections of mixed formats. When you think of the archives, many people picture dusty old books and old photos, and that's true, we have those as well, but we also have expanded as technology has expanded. So we have digital collections, including audio-visual materials, and a common umbrella. These often fall into the common umbrella of special collections, but the thread running through them usually is that they're unique or rare. That doesn't necessarily mean old. If there's only one copy of something in the world, even if it was produced 5 minutes ago, it can still be called rare. Another unique or particular part of the collection scope is that they fall in a unique subject head or specialization. The Medical Heritage Center that I oversee specializes in health sciences collections, history collections in Central Ohio. So we have a very specific focus of what we're collecting. These collections, though, differ from medical records. I often get called by people tracking down their medical records. They're different from just a general medical record because they're believed to have enduring historical value. And often this enduring value is very different from the purpose it was created. It provides a glimpse into the past, so it can tell us what we used to do for a particular disorder or treatment, but it can also be used by different disciplines, not only medical professionals or health sciences historians. For example, accounting books that doctors created at the beginning of the 20th century can be used to document the economics of healthcare during a certain time period. It can tell you a lot about the demographics of the area, what people were seeking treatment for and what they weren't. So there's a lot of demographic information that can be found in these sort of records. And likewise, films that were created to instruct nurses on best care practices can be studied by those in gender study departments to study gender roles and professions. So there's a lot of different uses. One of our largest non-university, non-academic user are genealogists, people tracing their family history, history of disease often, also just seeing if grandfather really did graduate from medical school like he said. Sometimes we have to say, I'm sorry, we have no record of that. You can find health sciences historical collections in a variety of settings. Most hospital libraries will have a small archival or special collections section within their library. Staffing's very different. In large academic medical institutions, such as The Ohio State University, you'll have archival professionals that have training in these areas. I, for example, have dual master's degrees in history and special collections, as do many of my staff members. In smaller local hospitals, you may find that this is under the purview of just the general librarian who really doesn't have any training in special collections, or you'll find that it's the job of an administrative professional or maybe a retired healthcare professional or even a volunteer. So you'll find people come from a variety of backgrounds who are curating these materials and also in different ways. If they're curated professionally, traditional archival arrangement and description theory emphasizes a higher organizational level of collections rather than detailing materials at an item level. So, for example, you won't find every single letter detailed. You might find a file that says correspondence instead of who wrote an item and who did not. Normally, archives are also arranged at collection level and you keep the organization that was given to it by its creator, and this is called original order, meaning that often if a collection comes in and it's good enough shape, that's the organization we keep. And it's because, first of all, modern records are just so overwhelming and vast. We're far from the paperless office, that when they come in, you could never detail things at an item level. And also we feel that the organization given to it by the creator says something to it about the collection. It was given a meeting for a certain purpose, so you want to preserve that. So there's a couple different reasons why we do that. However, because we don't often drill down to the item level, there may be a lot of private information, especially within health sciences library collections. There might be a lot of private data without the knowledge or intellectual control of those who curate it. There can be even less organization or intellectual control by those who are curating these collections on the side or as an additional responsibility. Prior to the development of the internet and technology for digitization, the risk of widespread exposure of privacy-sensitive materials was more limited. The rare and unique materials contained within the collections were not circulated because they're rare. We don't check these out to patrons as we would a book. And often a researcher must travel across the country to several different sites to physically view them in a reading room. Once in a reading room, traditionally researchers had to provide identification, sign release forms, and say that they understood the rules and policies of a particular archival institution. It's also provided a time for us to actually meet with the researchers who came in so we could quiz them about why they needed these records, not just to be overlords of the records, but also to make sure we were understanding their needs. Materials are brought out as requested. People don't often have access to just have some fun in the archives and pull materials. So there's a lot of control. And because of that, any type of sensitive information was protected, even if it existed and we didn't know about it, from widespread exposure, because it was obscured just through the means of control. However, the advent and increased usage of technological means to promote and increase access to special collection materials has increased the threat of widespread confidentiality and privacy breaches to users. As I mentioned, only one researcher at a time could use materials. They'd have to come to our site and look at them. However, now that materials are digitized and placed on the internet for anybody to access, they're being used in various different ways, in ways we couldn't know, as we had very tight control in the confines of a reading room. The ability for this widespread exposure also provides challenges to our donor agreements. Most of our materials come into the archives through donations. Doctors and lawyers are the number 1 and 2 rare book and archival material collectors in the United States, so it's just a hobby for a lot of physicians, so most of our materials come in through donations. And when they do this, they sign a donor agreement, and they may have been very comfortable knowing that these are my family's papers, this is how you provide access to them, and I understand the purpose of your facility. It's for academic, usually health sciences, historical research. They may not have been as comfortable to know that we were placing their family secrets online, digitizing them, and sending them out to the world. So the risk of exposure and the comfortability of privacy entrusted to us changes quite a bit when we send these records out into the world.